GenAI. Always attentive, always ready. The power of pure focus. The ability to calculate without distraction. But there's something GenAI can't compute. Something it can't predict or quantify. The human touch. The ability to feel, to understand, to empathize. The power of thoughtfulness. The trust built by personal relationships. Together, these things form a perfect partnership. The relentless focus of GenAI, guided by the irreplaceable touch of professional humans. Because the best innovations come from the mind and the heart.
All right, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Really excited to have you here at our session today. We've got a great set of content, but most importantly, an amazing panel to talk to you about the state of generative AI, specifically in the enterprise, and what's the executive playbook look like. Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Rowan. I head up AI for Deloitte's U.S. businesses, and really excited to be here with you today at CES. So let's dive in a little bit. It's been about a year since we've been here, been back at CES. We heard, I don't know if you guys were at the keynote last night from Jensen, he sort of set some context about what a year it's been. And it's been a crazy year. We've seen a lot of tremendous advancements in technology, a lot of challenges in organizations trying to adopt this new technology, a lot of conversations around trust and the risk and regulatory environment. And so it's been pretty exciting too. And I'm thrilled that we've made so much progress. And one of the things that I thought would be helpful as we think about the market and what's going on is sort of putting it in the context of some numbers. So if you think about the overall addressable market, we're talking about a $3 trillion market here. Now, Jensen, I think, talked about a couple of 30, 40 billion trillion dollar market sizes as well yesterday, so maybe a little bit larger than what I was talking about. But in general, this market is huge. And really what we believe is that AI is going to be part of everything that we do. And we're going to have to be thinking about how AI incorporates to all the things that we're doing. And so it's really important to keep that in the back of your mind. The other one was around sort of what's the growth rate around software. So 37% growth rate that we're expecting in sort of AI enterprise software, which is pretty substantial and a quick, rapid increase of what we're seeing in the marketplace. Now, as we think about that as sort of an external in view, then we talk a little bit more about what are companies investing in. And what we've seen is about 45% of companies are investing in the data and infrastructure side of things. 30% are investing in talent and training. And I think we'll get into this in the panel a little bit, but me personally, I think that's a bit of an underinvestment and something that's super important for what we need to do in the market. And then about 25% are investing in software and services. So what are the results? I think this is some of the things that we've been seeing in the headlines too, is what are the results you're getting from AI? Well, 25% are reporting some form of increased operational efficiency, but probably not enough, right? We need to see more of this in the marketplace and more attentive to what are the results that we're driving the ROI from our AI investments. And yet, there's also this challenge too, and this 23% talks a little bit about how prepared organizations are from a risk and governance perspective. So we're investing a little bit in talent, but only 23% actually feel that they're prepared from a risk and regulatory and governance perspective. So a long way to go there as we think about 2025 and the direction that we're headed. Now, we've generated a lot of revenue, and this is a $68 billion number that we talk about in terms of revenue generated around this AI space. I think probably even underclubbed a little bit. But most importantly, and I want to sort of end the number rundown with you on this, 64% report a sense of urgency around AI. They have to do something with AI. I don't know if this room feels the same way, but I feel this pressure in my job every day about what are we doing with AI, how are we staying on top of this, how are we helping our employees, how are we helping our clients to really grow in this space. And so we've got to figure out a way to continue to do that at a rapid pace and thoughtfully with the ideas around risk and governance. Now, as we think about the marketplace over the past year, one of the things that we've done to help frame up this conversation is really look at a generative AI value chain that really takes you from compute all the way through to output to the value creation. And that's what's represented in those blue boxes on the middle of the page. Now, on top of that, we've sort of layered this framework of AI for business and business of AI. The business of AI is where we've seen a lot of action today. A lot of organizations investing in those foundational capabilities to really build out the infrastructure that they need to be successful from an AI perspective. Underlying the business of AI is a lot of work in data, security, and trust to really make sure, like we mentioned, being ready for that risk and governance that we need from an AI perspective. But what we're really trying to push forward for, and what we spent a lot of time on in the past, we've seen a lot of POCs, the proofs of concept, the proof of value, but where do we get to enterprise scaling? And that's really where we see this AI for business concept, where we see organizations really embracing AI across the board, incorporating it into everything that they're doing to try to enable more value across their enterprise. And so that's kind of the frame that we talk about when we think about the market today. And so the business of AI, while super important and where we need to invest, we're hoping that we can continue to unlock the value from AI, which we know will be a journey for us, but the journey has started early, and we're going to continue through 2025 on that journey. And so with this, I'd like to sort of set the stage and welcome an amazing group of panelists that we have to join us today for a conversation about scaling enterprise AI. And so I'd like to bring up on the stage Lori, Greg, and Michael, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it takes to scale enterprise AI and what it looks like in their businesses. Awesome. Please welcome them to the stage. Thank you guys for joining. All right, so before we dive in here, I was going to ask you guys, we're not in exact order, but it's okay. We'll figure it out.
I thought you were going to sit over there.
You know, we practiced this a number of times, so we got to figure it out. So maybe, Lori, I'm still going to start with you, though. Maybe you could start with a brief introduction, tell us about what you do, and then we'll go across the group.
Awesome. Well, it's amazing to be back at CES again this year. Lori Castillo-Martinez. I lead talent growth and development at Salesforce, which really means I'm very focused on this notion of where our technology is coming together with our talent. And how do we need to think about this now and in the future and really make sure we're prepared as an organization.
Awesome. Great. Michael, over to you.
Hi, I'm Michael Park. I lead AI go-to-market for ServiceNow. It's a newly created role that we made last year. As ServiceNow is moving into AI, we realize that the underlying tech's moving so fast, but we have to ourselves as a company, as well as for our customers and our partners, prepare for that kind of speed as well. So my job is partially internal, working across the company to make it AI ready, and partially external in helping customers and partners bring the technology roadmap into adoption for the market.
Awesome. Greg.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name's Greg Cathy, 30-year Walmart associate. I lead transformation and innovation for Walmart US as well as safety and security. And we're in the process of transforming a Fortune 1 retailer.
That's awesome. Well, so maybe we could start, Lori, a little bit. Maybe you can unpack a little more about where you are on the transformation journey. We've heard a lot about enterprise scaling. We've seen organizations trying to do it. Where are you on that journey?
Sure. Well, when I think about the journey of Salesforce, it's really been, we've been in AI for over 10 years now, really starting with the first wave around predictive, moving into generative. I mean, these phases have been building on each other for years. And, you know, more recently with autonomous agentic AI, you know, we're all about agents these days, launching Agentforce over the last couple of months and really looking, you know, when we think about agents, these are our digital workers that are executing those specialized tasks independently. And this is where we are today. And it's come fast and furious. I know we were talking about this earlier of, you know, it seemed like we've been building over the years, and then this last year has just been accelerating like crazy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when we think about Agentforce, it's really about how do we have that agentic layer on top of the Salesforce platform, leveraging the amazing data. But the really cool thing about it is this is where we're able to autonomously take action in every business. And I think one of the things that's really exciting for me is just how accessible it is. And so as customer zero and as an employee, it's a really exciting time because you're learning something every day.
Yep.
You're able to do hands-on keyboards every day with the technology. And it's an experiment. It's really figuring out how you can be better at your work, at your job, with your team on a daily basis. So
Awesome.
It's exciting times.
That's great. Well, Greg, you've been at Walmart for 30 years, an associate there. You've probably seen a lot of different transformations. AI is just another one on the list, right? Where would you consider yourself, though, on the journey?
I think we're just getting started,
Okay.
but we're leaning into it. I mean, one of the ways we think about change and transformation is being frontline focused and frontline obsessed. So we spend a lot of time in our field talking to our frontline associates, and one of the things that we're really excited about, we have a ton of data, but how do you serve that data up in an actionable way so our associates and our managers can action on it? So we have a tool that we call Me at Walmart. It's an app that basically all of our associates work out of. So we've been in the process last year of building a generative AI engine that takes all of this data and sequences in a way that it doesn't matter if you're a 5-year associate or a 5-week associate. It helps you choose what the next best action is.
Yeah.
And so as we think about the work that we're doing to automate our supply chain, the precision of our data is getting better and better as we go through.
Okay.
So in the past, it would take an overnight manager over an hour to build a plan to stock a Walmart store. Now it's less than 5 minutes.
Wow.
So
Wow.
multiply that times 4,600
Yeah.
stores, it adds up.
Yeah, I love the real value stories too, because I feel like sometimes in the market, we struggle to hear those real-time saving stories about people really driving efficiency. So I think that's super helpful. So Michael, over to you. How would you classify ServiceNow on the journey?
Yeah, we're pretty deeply in it.
Yeah.
We went full hog early. And I would describe the Now on Now implementation as super successful. We've extracted about $100 million of operating redeployment in the last 12 months across the company. So we've been able to not just reduce some headcount, and we don't count it by the reductions of heads. We're looking at services to the employees and customer service.
Okay.
So we look at how many employees are required, or how many employees exist for one person that's delivering the service. So in IT, many of you are probably in IT, we're able to deliver for one IT service desk agent service to 700 employees. The industry average by which we can tell is somewhere around 100.
Yeah.
A big part of that lift was the introduction of the generative AI, but it's not just the generative AI, it's the combination of that with the inference of the LLM. It's the automation, and it's the intelligent reporting that drives into the action.
Yep.
So the cool part about, I think, the approach that every vendor in the market's going to have is they're going to learn how to use their data and the existing semantics of the application workflow that they deliver and ingest it or infuse it with the AI to really supercharge people.
Yeah.
And then the autonomous piece will come after that, because you'll need the orchestration agent coming over these different independent single-purpose agents to really bring the autonomous state in that can then really move to removing remedial work from entire classes of work.
Wow.
And redeploying, which I think is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, and it's super fascinating. We can't go a moment out here probably without talking about agentic AI. We'll get to it, don't worry. We'll talk about it. I mean, but maybe, so you've given us a good sense of sort of where you are in the journey. A lot of times we talk to our clients about well, what's the strategy? What's the North Star? What are you trying to head towards? Why are you doing this? We're not just doing AI because we need to do AI. It's not random acts of AI in the organization. Let's be strategic about it. Maybe I'm going to switch up, and Greg, maybe I'll start with you if that's okay. If you could talk about how did you guys approach the strategy behind this? You mentioned data was a key part of it, but building on that.
I mean, you can imagine a company like Walmart, we're not lacking for data.
Yeah.
We look at that, and then we try to find the defects in our experience, either for associates or customers. Mm-hmm. We spend a lot of time in the field. We've got a huge field operation and talking through that. But the strategy is for customers, how do you eliminate friction? And then for associates, how do you eliminate a thankless task?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do that where you can use tools, AI, to pull those thankless tasks out of their workflow? That gives our associates more time to spend helping customers or helping one another. I'll give another tool as an example. We have a computer vision tool that's called VisPick. And so in the past, if you wanted to stock a Walmart store, you would get a sheet of paper and you would go to the floor and you would write it all down and then go to the back. In allowing computer vision to do all that work, we know what we have on the floor. Now we can locate all of our inventory that we have in the back room. Oldest problem in retail: what do you own and where is it? So now our associates can use computer vision. We capture all of that data that then makes us so much smarter in the decisions that we're making. Last year, we picked almost 1.5 billion items out of a back room to move to the sales floor. Wow. So imagine the savings the time savings that our associates get that they can reinvest. So frontline focus, how do we look at what's a pain point for a customer or associate, and then how do we attack it?
Seems very process driven too. I think what all of you are saying as well. So maybe Lori, maybe you could comment a little bit too about the strategy setting process.
Sure. Well, I think, for me, one of the things that's been really interesting is as the products evolve, you have to think about how your talent evolves.
Yep.
right? The people are really an important part of this. It's the humans with the agents, or the humans with the AI, where you get that supercharge you were talking about as well. It's like, how does that all come together? And so when we think about our people strategies, it's been very much about how do you get hands on keyboards? How do we think about our employees, not only the tasks that they're doing, but the tasks they're doing for our customers.
Yeah.
We just, actually, if you haven't worked with an agent, you can go out to help.salesforce.com and actually start talking to agents. And I will say this has been one of the really interesting things about talent, and sort of diffusing some of maybe some of even the resistance of trying out AI, or some of that intimidation of agents. Are they going to replace my work?
Yeah.
You know, we start to think about, okay, well, the digital workers with the humans, how do we come together, and how do you start experimenting? And I think from a strategic perspective, it's been this very quick pivot to make sure that we're really thinking about autonomous, but we're also thinking about how, as an organization, we can be agile, we can continue to be creative, and how do we give people the experiences in their work so that the AI is relevant, the agents are relevant to what they're doing day to day, because I think that's part of that adoption story. Has got to be that relevance. Are your products relevant? Are their use cases relevant, so that people can see the power of what it looks like when you really, when you bring it to your day to day? And I think that's going to be the difference maker there.
Makes sense, makes sense. And Michael, what would you add in terms of how you guys are thinking about the strategy?
I think it's, I mean, it's the agility, but it's also the adoption speed.
Yeah.
The last 12 months has been interesting because I think everybody got the mandate from the board down that you have to do GenAI.
Thou shalt do AI fast, quickly.
And then the receivers were like, oh shit, I got to go do AI. And so what we find a lot of times is customers are not successful in the GenAI POC because they were just kicking the tires.
Yeah.
And I think it was what we're talking about is you have to start with a point of view on the value.
Yeah.
And so what's the business value you're trying to achieve? And then the AI is just the application of the tool set to actually get the supercharge out of it.
Yeah.
But then what we learned is that discussion, the tech's the easy part almost. It very quickly goes to how do I deal with the governance, how do I deal with the change management, how do I characterize the value, and then the build buy.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that we're spending way more time talking about those four things than we are the tech itself.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd love for you to pick up a little bit on the build versus buy conversation too, because we get that question a lot too. I mean, there's a lot of amazing toolkits and things available to assemble to deliver an AI solution. How have you helped organizations think through that build versus buy decision?
Yeah, I think it's build and buy.
Build and buy, yeah,
right.
Great.
Early in, we saw that this was going to be an issue, and so we kind of did a crawl, walk, run. We created 3 models. One is, if you're using ServiceNow and you want to go out of the box, you literally turn it on because we built our own LLMs. It runs inside the data center in the instance the customer already has.
Yeah.
Average time to deploy is 30 days. You're up and running. The second is you've got to get trained on prompt engineering workbench to use those LLMs to optimize. A lot of things customers do is they take their entire acronym of the company, feed it into the prompt engineering list as a first effort to get a better result. And then the third is actually integrating your own LLM or building your own LLM capability and integrating it into the platform. So every customer is kind of in that journey. But what we find is a lot of customers started in that third bucket. But once they finish, they're like, okay, I'm done. But the result's not great, and it's super expensive. It's difficult to maintain. Oh, and I still have to integrate it to my systems of action.
Yep.
Right? So that's where it's like, if you can move fast with a package vendor, and then build to the custom on things like KYC, know your customer, where you really need that fidelity, I think that's where the model is going to evolve.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot. Gray, any comments on being in the position at Walmart to think through some of those build and buy decisions? Any things you would share with the group as well to add on about like how you guys have weighed those?
Well, I think Michael's 100% correct. It's and.
Yeah.
So you have to balance, we talk about speed versus secret sauce. Like what's commoditized and we can just take it and we can run really, really fast. And then what are the pieces of development that are going to be core capabilities to us that we want to own, we want to manage. I feel when we get in we have a tendency to move very, very slow. And it's too monolithic. We're not moving fast enough. So I really do think as an and in that way, what we have found is we're moving a lot faster than we were 4 years ago.
Sure, that's great. Lori, anything else to add to that?
The only thing I would say is is working with your businesses to understand the use cases is really, really important. Just to pick up on your point around adoption, this isn't a technology where you start with the technology.
Right.
And I think to the points made, like sometimes people run to the technology. It's actually really understanding your use case, getting those from business leaders day to day. What are the things that are really going to make a difference, and then going and exploring and understanding. If this is something you want to deploy quickly in your business, something that is already a tool you're using, or something that's an agent for something that's a layer built already on top of your Salesforce implementation, you can go a lot faster because that's already part of the suite that you're working with. In other cases, that there may be other options that are worth the combination.
Yeah. Well, so I want to pivot a little bit to one of the topics. You guys have all talked about sort of humans and AI working together, driving value. We say that in stages, we say that in our meetings inside. How does that actually work? Like, how do we think through like some of the steps we should be taking to really make that happen? And maybe, Michael, if it's okay, I'll start with you on this one to get your take on like what were some of the things you did just to like get the team going and that being okay with that?
Well, so ServiceNow is in the business of service management.
Yeah.
So it was pretty easy for us to get started using the LLM to really take some of the remedial work out of service agents.
Yeah.
Because when you talk to service agents about what they hate to do,
Yeah.
it's logging all the information, it's looking stuff up, it's having to swivel between different systems to get what they need to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's identifying the next best action. So LLMs are pretty good at that, turns out.
Right.
Right? And so we were able to present through the fulfillment side of somebody coming in to request a lot more accuracy and a lot more productivity. So BT is a great example right
Yep.
now. They're using our stuff in their call centers. Their agents are 88% more productive in handling an incident. And the reason is because the system is now writing the notes. It's listening to the call, writing the notes,
Yep.
appending them into the knowledge base, which is then improving the system itself for the next time around. And then based on the actions they're taking, the system's now starting to recommend the next best action, or at least 3 or 4 of them that's like, here's what you could do. To do that 2 years ago using virtual assist technology in any vendor
Yeah.
was a really hard effort.
Yep.
BT was up and running in 60 days.
Wow.
So this is the kind of stuff, they didn't deploy to the whole world, they
Sure.
deployed into a segment. But this is what we're talking about is the access to the technology is so good. It's not a question of whether you're going to realize the benefit. It's do you see the vision for what it can be? Because the biggest mistake we're seeing is people are just incrementally doing what they do on a new tech platform versus using the tech to completely rethink how it could be in a better way.
Got it. Helps a lot. Lori, maybe pivoting to you, you deal with this from a talent employee engagement perspective. How are you getting people to think through and get comfortable with using AI and being a helper with them?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but it's really this notion of hands-on keyboards,
Yep.
right? Really understanding what it means for you in your job and being able to take those use cases. And so we've tried to find what are those prolific areas that we can really get people understanding what it is, how do we use it. And I think one of the other important insights we found is that the way we work must change.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether you're a manager or an individual, so how an individual, to your point about we talk about humans and AI together. Okay, who knew how to do that a year ago, right? This is actually something we need to think about. What is that skilling? How do I do my own job differently so that I can maximize the use and get all of those productivity gains we're talking about? It may be that my job is impacted. And so then how do I reskill and upskill so that we can actually rebalance and redeploy talent across the organization that starts to create great careers? And then if you're a leader, our best leaders, our best people and managers are going to be those that can look at this suite of options and say, this is where I can best deploy the people in my organization. This is the best way I can deploy digital labor or digital workers. And this is where I'm still just going to automate, because that's the best solution on the table. And so I think as a leader, it's really going to change the way we think about work and how it happens in our organizations. And as individuals, the best thing we can do is figure out how you can spend that time upskilling and just practicing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're really seeing. When managers are really engaged in AI, we see better engagement from employees. And when employees are excited, we see that they're more experimental, more interested in understanding how they continue to extend the use of the technology.
Makes sense. And Greg, I mean, you've dealt with a ton of associates, executives all the way on down.
Couple of million.
Couple of million,
who's
yeah,
counting?
just a few.
Yeah.
Small team.
Small team.
Small team, you may have heard of us. I think for us, it's starting with use cases that really matter.
Yeah.
Again, I talked about frontline focus. We are not building tech for tech's sake. We're building tools that are going to be valuable for both associates and customers. So with Sidekick, we started in the field. We listened. We developed the tech, but we have a process, and I think this is so important. You have to have a process to test and get the real results of what is going on and make sure that we're not just telling the home office or telling leadership, yeah, we think this is doing what we think it's doing. So we spend a lot of time as we're deploying in our test market. We test everything in Dallas, Texas. There's not a piece of transformation that gets deployed in Walmart US that doesn't go through Dallas. It gets tested. Our teams there know to give us very straightforward, direct feedback. And then we move it to about 500 stores.
Yeah.
And we set and try to pick out all the edge cases.
Just 500.
It's about 10%, about 10% of the fleet. So we get to 500 stores, and then we see the results. And that's that moment in time. Are you getting the value versus are we just talking to ourselves?
Yeah.
And we have a couple of forums in Walmart. We try to move with speed. We're super flexible. But governing transformation in Walmart, you go through two forums and two mechanisms. And one is a transformation mechanism where I'm there with my operations counterparts and supply chain and stores. And then there's a deployment mechanism. And that model over the last 4 years has worked really well for us and allowed us to bring a lot of value to not only associates, but customers.
I think what's really interesting too at this moment is that AI has focused us in on this concept of scaling. Like, I don't think we talked about scaling a little bit, but do we have the right governance, process, procedures to actually scale? And I think organizations are bumping into that, right? Like you had a clear process so you could fall into it, but I don't know if you guys are seeing something similar like that too.
Yeah, we had to build an AI control tower on now, and that's actually going to be released to the market because it's not just, it's the risk, the compliance, and the governance of the tools, but it's also the performance and the drift. And you're not going to have just one tool. So this is a whole, if you think about application lifecycle management, this is a whole new process that needs to be put in place. And once agentic really comes in, you're also going to need to do that universally across every AI agent.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Well, so you just
be
opened
managing your digital workers.
I was gonna say you just opened the agent can of worms. So do you want to give us your definition of what is an AI agent?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll go down the panel and see how we feel.
That'll be interesting. I think people are, it's so new.
Right.
Agentic is for us, at least at ServiceNow, it's a spectrum of capabilities.
Yep.
So today, you have a lot of single-purpose capabilities. So summarization using LLM would be an example of a single-purpose agent.
Yeah.
And there are many agents being stood up in that capacity today. The next generation of that we define is AI orchestration, where you're going to have an orchestration engine that understands the domain context of the platform it sits on to use the skills to actually create an output of recommendations or activities.
Yeah.
And then the next phase of that is the autonomous state, where that is using itself to basically replace or cannibalize an existing deterministic workflow.
Right.
So we look at it in those three phases, and we're building to each of those three. But right now, most of the market is still in that phase one of agent, taking a feature function, putting the inference on it, driving some automation against it, and using some extensive data access to build around a feature set. That's how we would define an agent today.
Makes sense. Would you guys add, take away anything?
Yeah, I think for me it's very similar, but I would say with Agentforce we've really supercharged the agentic piece, moved fast and furious straight there around how do we leverage our data and our retrieval technologies to make sure that we are starting to do that orchestration, starting to do multitask, but the idea of it being autonomous, leveraging that data and being able to take that action on your behalf. One of the tools we have is around careers. So it goes out and looks at an employee's skills and being able to look at and see, okay, you've got these skills. Now this agent's going to go out and look for jobs based on those skills, look for the learning you need, and it's doing those tasks on your behalf, right? Yeah. It's inferring and leveraging the technology, but it's that autonomous piece and starting to link that up with other areas where it starts to become really powerful.
I don't think I could answer it any better than these two.
Disagree.
But if you
Totally disagree.
if you would have started with me, I would have called on Aaron Berg, who builds all of our tools, and asked him in the front row to answer that. But I can't do any better with them. So I'm glad you
Aaron,
started.
what do you get? Thumbs up? We good for the? All right, good.
Good job, Aaron.
I love it. Well, then maybe just to ask you guys a couple other things. I mean, so part of this is getting advice, executives thinking about the playbook for AI. Maybe a piece of advice that you'd want to give the group to think through. And Greg, I was going to start with you if that's all right. Because I think also both navigating, I mean, there's plenty of places to play in this topic too, but I'm thinking about like navigating the board and getting their approvals for things, navigating employees we've talked about culture. Is there one or two pieces of advice you'd give to the group?
Well, maybe I'll lean in on culture.
Great.
And how do you drive adoption? Because I think what our leadership team is looking for is, well, like I guess it'd be three things. A, is it easy?
Yeah.
B, does it work? And then C, have you listened to the frontline customers and associates? Kind of a theme that I've talked about this whole time. And so when I go before our board or our senior leadership team, those are the things that they're going to be asking for us. And then a lot of it will depend. I mean, we have a legacy and a culture of listening to our associates. So that's normally where we start. Yeah. And what does the field say? How do they feel about this? And then they'll get into the numbers of adoption. Like if we're not seeing from a cold start adoption in the high 60%, we don't feel like we're where we should be. Okay. So when we start something, we want to see that our associates love it because it's easy and it works.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, I think what I would add to that is, again, this sort of notion of use cases. What are the things that are most relevant to your organization? If you don't start there, you're missing the boat because it won't feel important across your organization. And the same thing would apply whether you're talking about your customers, your partners, or your employees. You've really got to think about those use cases. The second thing I would say is access. Get out there, use it, hands on keyboards, start to build it. I'll do a small plug for Trailhead, which is our online learning platform. In 20 minutes, you can go figure out how to build your own agent. Get out there and learn. And every company has some version of ways that you can learn and experiment with AI. We were all talking about, well, what's your favorite one that you use? And I think it's like, if you don't have a favorite, you're not using it enough.
That's a great, challenge.
Get a favorite, because probably as you're walking around CES, somebody's going to ask you what your favorite one is. So have a favorite. And then I would say the last thing is, as an organization, find lots of different ways to engage your employees. Everybody has different learning styles, different time available to engage. And again, whether you're talking about your employees or the customers that you're working with, finding different ways to create that exposure, to create that learning, and making sure that you're building that time in is going to help drive your adoption and just drive the excitement around where we are. It's a really cool time to be doing this work, and it's a really cool time to be here.
Well, and we have front row seats to this amazing technology change in the world, which is amazing and cool. Michael, all right, advice.
From what I've seen, the thing I would add, and this is really in Lori's world, but I see it probably the most important thing if you're an executive driving AI.
Yeah.
You have to be ready to be comfortable leading change and driving through influence across the entire company.
Yeah.
I took this job and I thought, I am going to just take the roadmap and enable a bunch of salespeople and partners, and then we're going to drive deployment. I spend half my time with legal, with HR, with IT, with operations, because what you find when you deploy AI is it is universal. It is not inside of a function or a system. It runs across the enterprise, and it breaks a lot of the mindset of the traditional enterprise that we have grown up in, where HR is in a silo and finance is in a silo. AI cuts across the entire enterprise. So you have to have a mindset for how do you drive goal alignment of this business value that AI will create, and how do you bring multiple functions of the company along for the ride, because you can't get that value pivot if you don't have all those functions aligned.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so many times, one of the major failures of POCs that we see is that we didn't align with an element of the organization, so we got to go live or got to the moment and turn it on, and then, oh, wait, legal wasn't comfortable with this. Well, that's an important group to bring along on the journey here. Well, that is great. Thank you guys for that. And then maybe I got to ask, it's the start of the new year. We like to ask questions about predictions. So maybe I could go down the list here. And if you could, it's videoed, it's recorded. Everyone's here to really hold you accountable.
Next year.
Maybe we don't have to go for the end of the year. How about just in the next 3 to 6 months? What do you see are some predictions of what we're going to start seeing in the marketplace? And we'll make it a toss-up. Who wants to go first?
Well, look, I'd be remiss if I don't say agentic AI is going
Agent
to be
Force?
taken off, and it's all going to start with Agent Force. Sorry, friend. Yes, that is, I'm going to start with my baseline there. But the other thing, too, is actually just to pick up where Michael left off, which is I think this pivot of as our products evolve, our people and our talent need to evolve together and truly have successful transformations. All of us need to be thinking that way so that we can sort of like the high tides raise all the boats on this topic.
Love it.
I'm not going to speculate on the market. I'll let my wonderful colleagues here do that. Here's what I'll tell you about Walmart. In the first quarter, we'll fully have deployed Sidekick to 4,600 stores. We'll be using generative AI to help our associates determine what the next best activity or action is, so they're saving time. And the only other thing that I would say, and maybe just circle back, Laura, you were talking about use cases. If you're not saying no more than you're saying yes, it's probably a problem. I don't know how your companies are, but at Walmart, we don't lack for great ideas. And so the discipline around how you get the right people at the table, how you involve legal, how do you involve privacy to make sure that as you're building use cases from the very beginning, everyone is aligned at what the outcomes and goals, and then you take those people along with you, those teams along with you, you'll be able to move with speed.
Love it. Great. Predictions, Michael?
Well, my first comment would be to Lori, let the best man win.
Or woman.
But all kidding aside, I think 25 is going to be the year where it really lands. The hype cycle, people are tired of AI just as a conversation term. There's a lot of hype out there, but I think 25 is going to be the year where it really hits.
Yeah. A get real year for us in AI. Love it.
I like that. Get real.
Get real year. All right, good. That's the prediction for all of us, and how about that? Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the panel today. Really appreciate it. Thank you all, audience, for joining us. We just have one more quick slide here. I just want to show up for the group. We've got this session here going on today, so we've got a couple other sessions following up. If you want to click in on the QR code, you can take a look, and it'll see sort of information about the next sessions going on in CES that Deloitte's involved with. You can take a look at those. And then one of the other things that's coming out, we release a State of GenAI report every quarter, so we track sort of what's going on in the marketplace and what are we seeing. It surveys about 2,800 executives. That report's coming out January 21st. Love you guys to take a look at it. A quick teaser and what's in there is a really great matrix to look at functions that are deploying AI and the value they're creating from their use cases based on our survey respondents. So I think that's really helpful if you're trying to figure out where do I start, which function do I try to tackle. That's some empirical evidence you could take a look at. So with that, thank you guys very much. Panel, thank you guys so much. It was excellent.
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.